we start the webinar, we'd like to go through the setup of the webinar and let you know how you can participate in today's session. The slides show you an example of the attendee interface, and you should see something that looks like this on your computer. You've joined today's webinar listening through your computer speaker system by default. This means if you usually can hear music on your computer, you'll be able to hear the presentation. If you'd like to call in using the telephone, just locate your audio pane and select Use Telephone. The dial-in information and access code will then be displayed. The number and access code are indicated on this slide here at the bottom. You also have the ability to ask questions using our questions pane. Simply type in your question either in English or Spanish and click Send. At the end of the presentation, we will have time for discussion and go through the questions you submitted during the presentation. Please note that we'll be recording the webinar, and we will make a link available for those that have missed the webinar, as well as if you want to share it with colleagues or would like to go over it again. So, unless there's any questions at this time, I think I'll proceed with introduction speech, I think by Santiago Crujeras, Director General de Eficiencia y Sustentabilidad Energética from CENER. Santiago, are you there? Santiago?
Bueno.
Okay. Gabriela Reyes?
Sí,
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Buen día, muy bienvenidos a todos a este primer webinar del año relativo al tema de eficiencia energética en pymes. Antes que nada, y en nombre de mi director general, Santiago Crujeras, me gustaría agradecer a la Agencia Internacional de Energía por apoyarnos en esta presentación y organización del webinar, así como por compartir con nosotros los hallazgos de esta publicación, que básicamente, bueno, y en términos específicos, nos muestra un panorama general de las pymes a nivel mundial. Como saben, y de algunos es de conocimiento, en México el sector de las pymes es un sector prioritario en términos de competitividad y crecimiento económico. Representan cerca del 99% de la actividad económica y es por ello que en materia energética el gobierno federal está trabajando para que las pymes puedan adoptar medidas de eficiencia energética que les permitan reducir costos y ser más competitivos. Como algunos de ustedes sabrán, actualmente se encuentra vigente el programa federal denominado Ecocrédito Empresarial, que consiste justamente en apoyar a las pymes para que éstas puedan adquirir tecnología eficiente que les permita reducir su consumo eléctrico y hacer más conscientes de ellos. A su vez, también se están abordando y desarrollando esquemas similares de apoyo financiero en otros sectores del rubro de las pymes, como es el sector agroindustrial. También tenemos el conocimiento de la CONUE, por su parte, ha desarrollado una gran cantidad de materiales de apoyo, asistencia técnica para las pymes, que en constante y en continua comunicación con ellas se encuentra detectando esas áreas de oportunidad en materia de eficiencia energética. Inicialmente y recientemente con la Ley de Transición Energética, el sector de las pymes también es un sector prioritario ahora en el que debemos enfocar todos nuestros esfuerzos. Es por ello que este webinar sienta las bases de una discusión general que nos va a permitir justamente saber cómo está el mundo y cómo son las estadísticas, los números, el esquema general en cuanto al ahorro y uso eficiente de la energía de las pymes. Muchas gracias y espero que este webinar genere discusión, genere diálogo y pueda compartir el conocimiento para todos nosotros. Gracias.
Thank you, Gabriela, for your welcome remarks and for all your support with these webinars and also the information you mentioned on Mexico. So that's a great introduction to the presentation that my colleague Vida will now present. So passing on to Vida. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to present our recent work on how to accelerate energy efficiency in small and medium-sized enterprises. This is a topic that I'm very excited about, and judging by the large and varied participation in this webinar, as well as the introductory remarks by Gabriela, energy efficiency in small and medium-sized enterprises is of great interest and importance in Mexico. Before starting on the SMEs as such, I'd like to give you the context and the background for this publication. So our energy efficiency policy recommendations were developed in 2008 and updated in 2011. And these go through all sectors and provide a list of what are the types of measures that could be utilized by IEA member countries and also non-member countries to promote energy efficiency. And one of the sectors that we deal with is industrial energy efficiency. And here we've largely been working on large enterprises, but we also have a recommendation on promoting energy efficiency in small and medium enterprises, which is the topic of today. But it's one thing to tell countries or recommend what it is they should be doing. Actually providing guidance on how to do things is much more important and actually even more useful. And so that's where the IEA Policy Pathway series comes in. So we collect best practices and experiences. We discuss with a wide range of stakeholders and focus on what are the key elements needed to effectively plan, implement, monitor and evaluate policies and programs. And these are publications that are useful for national policymakers as well as a range of other stakeholders that are involved in energy efficiency, policy implementation, program development, as well as in promoting energy efficiency. And these publications are not only useful when you're at the outset of planning a policy or program, but throughout the whole policy and program implementation and evaluation process. To date, we have 8 such publications, and the most recent one is our publication on SMEs, the one that we'll be discussing today. And all of these publications are available in English for free download on our website. So before discussing SMEs, and as Gabriela already emphasized, SMEs play a very important role in the Mexican economy. And what we see in terms of energy consumption in Mexico, we do see that trends indicate an increase in consumption. And then quickly, if we look at energy intensity, we see that energy intensity has remained, with some fluctuations, remained at quite the same level. So what we'd optimally want to see is more GDP output per unit of energy used. So there are opportunities to, through improving energy efficiency, improve energy productivity of the economy. And if we look at which are the key sectors in the Mexican economy and where would it be good to focus energy efficiency efforts, we do see that transport is a very important sector, but it's quickly followed by the industrial sector. And looking at recent trends, we do see that energy demand of the industrial sector is increasing at a far faster rate than the transport energy demand. So possibly in just a few years' time, this pie chart might look entirely different if the efforts to improve energy efficiency in industry are not scaled up. So just looking at what kind of businesses in Mexico are utilizing this energy, we do see that these are industries where there is typically a relatively high participation of small and medium-sized enterprises. And I've also included a pie chart showing commercial sector energy use, which of course is far less than industrial, but also on a growing trend, and also an area where we do have a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises. And again, if we quickly just look at some of the changes in industrial energy use over the recent decades, what is notable is that electricity use has increased very much. So again, indicating that this might be an area that needs additional focus. So finally, to the topic of today. So what are SMEs? SMEs, as we all know, are a relatively badly defined group. Different countries define them in different ways. It can be the number of employees, it can be turnover, or other types of criteria. And the criteria vary across different countries around the world. And if we look at the group that is defined then as SMEs, it's a very heterogeneous group, a very different group. So we have manufacturing enterprises, commercial sector enterprises, high-tech modern enterprises, low-tech traditional enterprises, and a big diversity in terms of the size, very small micro enterprises, and up to medium-sized, quite substantial enterprises, and some enterprises are just at the outset of their economic activity, while others have been operational for many years. So it's a very diverse group. And one of the key reasons why we developed this energy efficiency guidance document is that developing energy efficiency programs for SMEs is difficult. In discussions with our stakeholders, discussions with a large variety of different government officials, they all emphasize that, yes, it's an important sector. Yes, it's a priority. Yes, we should be doing something in it. But it is difficult to develop these programs, to implement these programs, and to make sure that they're cost effective and make sure that they result in substantial energy savings and other benefits. And as I mentioned, one of the reasons is the heterogeneous sector. It's relatively easy to reach out to, say, 200 large enterprises and come to agreement about energy use and energy efficiency programs. It's much more difficult reaching the millions of small and medium-sized enterprises that operate within a country. While governments may have more direct relationships with large enterprises, they do not have capacity to directly reach out to a huge quantity of enterprises. So it is challenging. However, that said, there are many benefits on small and medium enterprises, energy efficiency to improve the productivity of these enterprises, to help modernize these enterprises and improve their competitiveness. If you look globally, small and medium-sized enterprises constitute 99% of all enterprises. They provide the largest share of all employment across all countries and provide significant shares of gross value added and GDP. Globally, there are significant energy savings in the SME sector, and across all countries, significant savings are possible. And whereas large enterprises typically across most countries have moved on in terms of energy efficiency and modernization of their operations, SMEs are still lagging behind. So there are significant energy efficiency potentials that could be implemented at no cost or low cost or with relatively small investments, and enable these enterprises to reinvest those savings into more productive activities rather than just paying for wasted energy. And there are significant benefits beyond the actual energy savings from implementing energy efficiency projects that these enterprises could benefit from, and these include improved productivity, competitiveness, lower costs, better working conditions, and even enhanced process and product quality. So issues that really are related to the core business of small and medium-sized enterprises. When we look at small and medium-sized enterprises in Mexico, we see that there are more than 5 million SMEs in Mexico, constituting a large share of all enterprises. contributing to a very significant part of the gross domestic product, employing a very significant part of the population. However, in Mexico and also in many countries across the world, SME sector is plagued by low productivity. And when analysis has been conducted of the Mexican economy, the low productivity of SMEs is often singled out as one of the main factors constraining the economy, and that the improvements that are made in terms of productivity by large companies have been offset by decreasing productivity in small and medium-sized companies. So there's definitely a need to address the productivity of small and medium-sized enterprises, and one strategy to effectively do this is to help these enterprises improve their energy efficiency and thereby help them modernize their processes, reduce their costs, enable them to invest in modern technology and optimized processes. Just a quick overview of where we find these different SMEs, and we see that they are operational across a range of different business activities. So finally, to our publication. And what I'd like to start off by is explaining why this publication is slightly different than our other policy pathways. Typically, we tend to focus on what is the role of the national government and what are the policies that it needs to implement. But when it comes to SMEs, a large group of stakeholders have a potential role to play. And in many cases, these stakeholders can be much more effective in reaching out to small and medium-sized enterprises. So the role for government may not be to implement all policies and programs by itself, but rather to develop strategic partnerships and create incentives for other organizations to work more actively with energy efficiency in SMEs. And so we see there is, of course, a role for national government. There is a role for municipalities, and I was very pleased when I was looking at the participants list to see that we have some municipalities participating today. Energy providers can play an important role, and also these sectors can acquire benefits from working with SMEs. For instance, energy providers can build their customer relationships, help manage peak demand issues. Industry and business associations can provide added value to members, and they can be a very important channel for reaching out to the small and medium-sized enterprises, because typically they are trusted sources of information and a point of reference for when SMEs need to find new information. Large enterprises can also potentially play an important role by working on energy efficiency within their supply chains, and thereby not only helping SMEs but also managing their own costs and, importantly, mitigating risks that could be associated with cost fluctuations and the impacts of energy costs on their supply chains. Also, financial institutions can play an important role. And as I mentioned before, there are multiple benefits from energy efficiency projects in small and medium-sized enterprises. And well, of course, the International Energy Agency, we focus typically on energy savings, and for us the greatest value is energy savings, and calculating these for governments and for other stakeholders and for SMEs themselves. Other priorities can be equally important, and when looking and discussing at energy efficiency programs, it's important to keep these benefits in mind, because they contribute to making a much stronger business case for energy efficiency. They can contribute to raising an interest in energy efficiency, and when assessing the impacts, the achievements of programs, they also contribute to showing how valuable these programs can be to the economy, not just through energy savings or greenhouse gas reductions, but in a wide range of different policy areas. So what are the key barriers? As we all know, there are lots of barriers to energy efficiency, but focusing on what are the most important or difficult constraints that small and medium-sized enterprises face is that they don't have information about energy efficiency. There is a lot of information out there. Anyone who Googles energy efficiency will get millions of hits. But these are companies that are very busy in their daily work. They need to meet their schedules. They need to meet their production output. They need to deliver services. They need to deliver products. They do not have time to sit and Google. They do not have time to read big books. They need information that they can easily digest, utilize, and information that is relevant to them. Also, an additional barrier is limited in-house skills and expertise. While large companies may have an energy management, most small and medium-sized enterprises will not have an energy management. They most probably will not even have a person who is responsible for energy efficiency. Focus is, of course, on daily activities, daily routines. Energy efficiency is an additional skill that most enterprises do not have. Often they need to resort on external skills. And as I mentioned, medium-sized enterprises and their managers, they're busy. They need to focus on day-to-day issues. They do not have time to try and source capital for energy efficiency investments. They might not even know what are the opportunities, what are the schemes that are available. So these are typical barriers that would constrain most small and medium-sized enterprises. But of course, looking deeper into each subsegment, there will be specific barriers depending on the types of companies. So as part of the process of developing this publication and developing our guidance, we sought to identify so what are the success factors, what are the things that governments and other stakeholders can focus on to ensure that programs are effective, that they deliver the benefits, and that they do not cost large resources in terms of finance and in terms of human resources. So as I mentioned before, building strategic partnerships is a way of pooling resources, acquiring the wide diversity of expertise needed to implement programs, combining measures, including information, capacity building, and finance within the program, leveraging existing policies and programs. For instance, if there are investment grants for modernizing technologies, perhaps it's possible to include an energy efficiency dimension, which could be a cost-effective way of increasing energy efficiency in companies that are utilizing this program. And as I mentioned before, focusing on multiple benefits and providing information that is direct, relevant, tailored, and targeted. And one of the most important points is to make it easy for small and medium-sized enterprises to access assistance, because we always need to remember that these are very busy enterprises. The owners and managers are very busy. Anything that program developers can do to facilitate access will be critical to the success of the program. So just to focus a bit on information, reaching millions of entities is complex. Their strategic partnerships can play an important role. They're investigating what are the channels where SMEs usually find their information. Perhaps it is discussing with retailers and vendors of equipment that can help them access the type of information needed. Trusted sources are very important when it comes to the importance that SMEs place on information and the time they spend on processing information. And here we've seen very good experiences of working with business associations or peers, other SMEs providing their experiences of working with energy efficiency. So as we discussed before, there is very little time to spend on finding information and processing information, so the information needs to be relevant and it needs to be targeted, making a strong business case for energy efficiency, and often it makes sense to relate this to the multiple benefits in the first instance, and only then talk about the benefits of energy savings and the benefits of greenhouse gas reductions, because the improving productivity, improving competitiveness are of strategic importance for businesses, while reducing greenhouse gases might be a nice objective, but not a strategic priority. And as I mentioned, making access to information easy. So there we have an image of a large pile of books that we will not get SMEs to read, and next to it there's an action checklist where information is condensed in an easily accessible way, and in a way that can be immediately made operational by small and medium-sized enterprises. When it comes to capacity building and expertise, our experience is that while focus is placed on, yes, small and medium-sized enterprises need to build their capacity, often we forget that other organizations working with SMEs also need to build capacity, because working with small and medium-sized enterprises is very different than working with large enterprises. So there is a need to ensure that external consultants, energy service providers, auditors are skilled and able to provide SMEs with the types of support that they need to implement energy efficiency. Also, financial institutions are less used to working with small and medium-sized enterprises in terms of any kind of finance, and even more so in terms of energy efficiency finance. So there's definitely a need to increase capacity of local banks in understanding energy efficiency, in understanding the needs of small and medium-sized enterprises, and enabling them to develop appropriate products. Also, program staff and partners might need capacity building and training, because this is a new type of business area and a new type of sector with differing needs and with differing expectations. So that's a point that we've noticed that many of our governments tend to neglect, but that is a crucial step to success. In terms of facilitating access to finance, often it's not a case of that there is not the availability of finance. Finance might be available, but SMEs might not know how to access it, or they might not be able to develop bankable energy efficiency projects. So again, it's a case of information, and it's a case of capacity building, and of course it is a case of developing financial instruments that are suitable for SMEs and for energy efficiency. And there are a wide range of experiences across the world in this area, and there's a wealth of experiences that countries such as Mexico can learn from when you continue to develop your portfolio of financial instruments. So when it comes to the different types of measures, what are the things that can be included in programs when it comes to information? Important tools can be websites, workshops, conferences, case studies. When it comes to capacity building and expertise building, training for building on-site expertise has proven to be very effective. Enabling SMEs to access external experts. This could be through subsidizing energy audits, or even providing energy audits free of charge. The audits themselves are an important part of capacity building, but also provide information and provide a basis for starting to implement energy efficiency projects through the identification of opportunities and creation of baselines. Networks have shown to be very effective, and there are different types of networks around the world. Some networks are sectoral, while other networks are regional, and these are based on peer-to-peer learning, whereby companies can share their experiences and learn from each other. Energy management is often identified as something more relevant for large enterprises, but it is possible to implement energy management systems in small and medium-sized enterprises. And the UNIDO and the ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, has started to develop tools and guidebooks specially targeting SMEs, and some countries are developing workshops and different types of manuals and support systems to enable small and medium-sized enterprises to engage in energy management. The benefit of energy management, as opposed to, say, just energy audits, is that energy management creates a framework and a structure for continuous energy efficiency improvements. The downside is that it does require significant resources from the company to implement, and of course a very strong management commitment. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, when dealing with capacity building, it's important not just to focus on SMEs, but also on the other stakeholders that will play an instrumental part in helping and supporting SMEs. And when it comes to access to finance, what's important is not only the financial mechanisms and the product, but also creating the capacity and the skills within expertise within SMEs to develop bankable projects. So our policy pathways are divided into 4 phases and 10 steps. We start with the planning phase, move on to the implementation phase, then we have a monitoring phase and an evaluation phase. And these steps are meant to provide a checklist for people involved in program development, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation about what are important issues to consider at a given stage in the program process. And we also illustrate these with examples from different countries and from different programs, showing how different success elements, how different experiences have been taking place in different contexts, which can provide others with inspiration, with ideas on what to avoid, with ideas on what to integrate into their activities. And then we have 3 case studies that we've used to more in-depth illustrate some of the processes behind developing and implementing programs. And our first case study is from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, where they've developed a program with a 3-pronged approach. So they provide information, capacity building, and finance, and they provide technical support both to financial institutions and to small and medium-sized enterprises. And this is one of the key issues that have contributed to the success of the program, is that they're offering the 3 key components in an integrated program, and they're offering technical support and capacity building for the key stakeholders throughout the program process. Because what we see in some other programs is that short-lived programs that provide maybe capacity building or a short training session of once or twice may not result in implementation, because there is a need to support SMEs in a more continuous fashion, from the identification of opportunities through to access to financing and implementation. And what we see is that often energy efficiency programs are rather short-lived. They have a duration of maybe 2 years or 3 years, which might not be sufficient to ensure that implementation takes place. Another case study that we've included is the Australian Energy Efficiency Information Grants Program, where the government, instead of trying to reach the millions of Australian small and medium-sized enterprises directly, provided a grant, provided an incentive to business associations to work with their members to improve energy efficiency. So this program focused primarily on information, but in some cases the business associations were able to also provide audits. And what we see from the program is that it was very effective in the sense that these business associations understood the needs of their specific sectors. They understood the needs of their members. They understood that there's no point in inviting their members, for example, for a 4-day workshop. Instead, they need an information meeting early in the morning for half an hour with coffee, with direct targeted information that's relevant for the owners and managers of these businesses. And so the Australian program was able to effectively harness the existing relationships of these associations in order to target and reach out to small and medium-sized enterprises. Our third case study, here we didn't focus on an individual program. Instead, we started to explore what could be the opportunities for large companies and large corporations to work with energy efficiency within their supply chain. So here we present experiences of a range of different companies that have worked both within their own countries and outside their own countries with very positive effects. And we've also included information about an interesting pilot study or a pilot project that's being implemented by the United States Department of Energy, where they provide incentives, access to technical support, as well as recognition to the large corporations that actively work with their supply chains to improve energy efficiency. And if you remember from earlier on in my presentation, for large companies, there are already benefits in doing this, since it can help mitigate risks, and it can also contribute to their corporate sustainability objectives and goals, as well as ensure that the relations with their supply chains are strengthened and ongoing. So finally, so what are some of the issues to consider? Objectives and priorities, and these need not only be energy savings and greenhouse gas reductions, but they can be and even should be related also to economic growth and development and other priorities. The first starting point when developing any program, as all of you know, is to review what are the existing policies and programs already out there that target either industrial energy efficiency or target SMEs, and what are the opportunities to leverage or to combine energy efficiency with some of these programs. Stakeholder consultation is an important process, and this will help understanding what are the needs, what are the priorities, and to build this into program design to make sure that the program addresses key constraints, addresses barriers, and provides services and support that is needed. As I mentioned before, I can't stress enough how important partnerships are. And I remember at some point when looking at the number of different organizations that work to support SMEs in Mexico, there are many. So there are many opportunities for strategic partnerships and many opportunities to avoid duplication and ensure that the support provided to SMEs is efficient and effective. And of course, looking at what are the policies and programs in other countries is also a good opportunity to learn and replicate from the successes of others, and the International Energy Agency, we have a database of policies and measures that could potentially work as a starting point to understand what are the different types of policies and programs that are being implemented in this area and what are the experiences. And as I mentioned, in the policy pathway itself, we do include a lot of examples from different countries. And as I mentioned, short-term programs, while they can be important in raising awareness and starting to motivate SMEs to work with energy efficiency, if we really want implementation and if we want to reap the many multiple benefits, it is better to focus on long-term programs to ensure implementation and ongoing energy efficiency improvements. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and I fully understand that I've been trying to cover a very complex, diverse topic in a very short period of time. And that was one of the things that when we proposed that we wanted to develop this pathway, many of our stakeholders said that, no, it's not possible to cover such a difficult topic in 80 pages. And I have to admit that it was definitely a challenge, and that it is not the most comprehensive of all publications, but we have managed to distill some of the key success factors and some of the important issues that stakeholders interested in promoting energy efficiency in SMEs can think about to ensure successful programs. And here I have a list of other publications that are freely available on the IEA website that might also be of benefit for your work in promoting energy efficiency in the small and medium-sized segment. And just to again emphasize that, yes, it might be challenging, but there are a wide range of benefits in working with small and medium-sized enterprises on energy efficiency, and neglecting to do so, we're missing not only significant energy savings opportunities, but putting SME segment at risk of being less competitive than enterprises in other regions and other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vida, for a very interesting and comprehensive presentation. We now have about 10-15 minutes for questions and discussion. If you have any questions, please put it through the question pane and try to address as many as we can. We've got a couple of questions already. So the first one that we have are SME energy efficiency programs more expensive to implement compared to programs targeting large enterprises?
Thank you, David, for this question that is quite difficult to answer because it depends on how we compare things. If we look at costs for implementing a program per unit of energy saved, then yes, small and medium-sized enterprise programs are typically more resource intensive. However, if we look at the range of other multiple benefits that can be unlocked through energy efficiency programs, the value of small and medium-sized programs may very well prove to be higher, and thereby the cost-benefit ratio would be similar or even better for the small and medium-sized energy efficiency programs.
Thank you, Vida. We're getting a series of questions. Some questions are regarding particularly Mexico, and some are looking back at what Gabriela Reyes said in the beginning about what's happening on small and medium enterprises in Mexico. So hopefully Santiago Correros will be doing the closing remarks in a couple of minutes, and he'll be able to tell you a bit more about what CONUE is doing with small and medium enterprises and how are they doing it as well. The next question that we have is it possible to develop standardized energy efficiency support and tools for all SMEs?
Thank you for this question. Again, as I mentioned, the small and medium-sized enterprise segment is very heterogeneous. To make tools and information relevant, they do need to be targeted. But that said, there are support systems within all enterprises that utilize energy in a similar way. So this would be lighting, this could be the use of motors, air conditioning, heating, cooling, and other support processes that might not be directly related to the core production or the core service provision of the enterprise. And there are opportunities to develop standardized guidelines, standardized suggestions, and standardized audits or standardized support in these areas. And looking at opportunities to develop standardized solutions is an important way of cutting costs, because when we consider the large variety of different types of enterprises, developing sector-specific guidance documents might be an overwhelming task, especially at the outset of programs.
Thank you, Vida. We're definitely getting a lot of interesting questions. We hope we can address most of them. The other one that we have is, and I can start a bit on that. Do you have any estimates about the financing needs from SMEs on energy efficiency technologies? The question was very specific to Mexico, but we can talk about it generally. Of course, these financing needs will change whether, depending on what sector, subsector we're talking about. It will depend on the country and the technology availability as well. So is this technology being imported, or is it available in the country? All these issues, and the CONUE has been working particularly on this area, doing some pilot projects, and that's available. That information is available on their website. But maybe, Vida, do you have it? So it's difficult to say exactly what would be the range, and maybe that's something for further study in Mexico. Another question that we have is, of course, there's a lot of challenges for SMEs because they've got very low financing options, or they don't have much financing for energy efficiency. So what could be the sort of low-cost energy efficiency strategies that they could implement? Again, this depends a lot on by sector, but what are the easy low-cost wins generally?
It definitely does depend by sector, but what we see is that many small and medium-sized enterprises across the world can implement no and low-cost savings in the region of 10, even 20% of their energy use. And these are how energy is used and managed within the enterprises. So simple things such as turning off equipment when it's not needed, turning off lights when it's not needed, enabling employees and educating employees to engage in more energy efficient behavior, making sure that when equipment does need to be replaced, consideration is paid to energy efficiency. So then when a company needs to invest in new lights, not look necessarily at the same lights that have been used, but look, are there any cost-effective, energy-efficient lighting options available?
Thank you, Vida. The other question that's interesting, and it's a bit specific to and it will be, well, it's applicable to many countries, is usually the lack of information. And it goes a bit back to a slide that you presented about lack of information, in some cases also the educational background to be able to address energy efficiency. So again, I think maybe not everybody picked on that, but is that something you can mention?
Training and capacity in all forms is an integral part for progressing in energy efficiency. And what's particularly important when it comes to small and medium-sized enterprises, while we've stressed that of course these enterprises need at least a basic level of capacity to work with energy efficiency projects, often they will have to rely on external experts. So it's very important to make sure that these external experts have the knowledge and capacity to work with SMEs, and that they provide advice that is implementable, that is relevant, and that they provide good services. We've seen in some countries and in some instances when consultants and energy service providers provide audits or reports that are not of a quality that the enterprises need or expect, then the interest in energy efficiency drops, and it doesn't come to the agenda for quite some time. So it's definitely a missed opportunity to not ensure that auditors, consultants provide a high level of services. And so when it comes to education, of course, that education starts already in schools and professional education, as well as re-education of engineers and other professionals on the topic of energy efficiency.
Thank you very much, Vida. I think we've run out of time, unfortunately. There's still a lot of questions coming through, so maybe a lot of them are specific to Mexico. What I'll do is, before we do the sort of closing remarks and pass on to Gabriela, I'd like to thank everybody for their attention and participation in today's webinar. We had some questions about the presentation, and the presentation is going to be available by the end of this week on the IEA's YouTube website, and we'll be sending you a link shortly. We'll also send you the PDF of the presentation, so please feel free to share it with your colleagues. For us, it's been a real pleasure to conduct this webinar, which we hope you found useful. We'd also like to thank Sener and Anna Lepur, our IEA staff at Sener, for all their support in helping us organize these webinars. We will continue to organize other energy efficiency webinars, with the next one being on the 16th of March 2016. It'll be at the same time, and it'll cover energy efficiency in buildings. So we'll keep you informed on this, and please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. Now I'll pass on to Gabriela to do the closing remarks and maybe repeat some of the work that they're doing with the small and medium enterprises. So just a second. Gabriela, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Gracias, David. Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos por sus preguntas. Rápidamente solo repito los programas que mencioné al principio. Son los programas a nivel federal que se encuentran vigentes hoy en día y que es de apoyo financiero principalmente. Es el ecocrédito empresarial, que es operado por el FIDE, el Fideicomiso para el Ahorro de Energía Eléctrica y Nacional Financiera. Y el programa de eficiencia energética en el sector agroindustrial, operado por FIRCO y por FIRA. Específicamente de cada programa, en cada uno de estos organismos podrían encontrar los detalles específicos, cómo acceder a ellos, en qué consisten y demás detalles. Pues sin más preámbulo, me gustaría dar y agradecer a todos ustedes, por supuesto, por todas estas preguntas y su atención. Si tuvieran alguna otra duda, vamos a atenderlas a la brevedad y en la medida de lo posible. Y muchísimas gracias por participar. David.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, and thank you everybody for your attention and participating in today's webinar. Thank you.